All right, let's talk diphtheria. In this first part, we're going to zero in on the stuff you absolutely have to know for your exams. We're talking about the bug itself, its killer toxin, and exactly how it causes disease. Let's dive in. Okay, first up, look at these pictures. These are the two classic signs that should scream diphtheria in an exam. On one side, you've got this gnarly, thick, grayish membrane covering the tonsils, and on the other, that massive swelling in the neck, what we call the bull neck. You see this, you think diphtheria. Simple as that. So, what in the world is causing this chaos? It's not just the bacteria hanging out in the throat. No, the real villain here is a super powerful weapon, a toxin. And we're about to break down exactly how this microscopic missile works. All right, let's meet the culprit. It's called Corynebacterium diphtheriae. And for those little history tidbits they love to ask, it's also known as the Klebs-Loeffler bacillus. A little nod to the guys who figured it out. Okay, these are your high-yield facts for any spotter or MCQ. You gotta know these. It's a gram-positive bacillus. It doesn't move, so it's non-modal. It doesn't form spores, so it's non-sporing. And check this out, it's club-shaped. In fact, the name Corynea actually comes from the Greek word for club. How cool is that? A built-in mnemonic. Now look closely here, because these two images are pure exam gold. On the left, that's the gram stain. See how the bacteria are clumped in these V or L shapes? We call that a cuneiform or Chinese letter arrangement. Super distinctive. Then on the right, we're using Albert stain, and it lights up these dark little dots at the ends. Those are metachromatic granules. If you see either of these in a practical, you know what you're dealing with. Okay, we've met the bacteria. Now let's talk about its weapon of choice. This is the main virulence factor, the absolute star of this whole nasty show, the diphtheria toxin. This is the thing that causes all the damage. So this toxin is a protein, but it's made of two parts, A and B. The easiest way to think about it is like a smart bomb. You've got fragment B, which is the binding part. That's the Biden system that locks onto our cells. Then you have fragment A, the action part. That's the warhead, the part that actually does the damage. And here's the dead simple mnemonic you need to remember. B for binding, A for action. The attack plan is super straightforward. First, B binds to the cell. Second, A gets inside. And third, A goes to work and wrecks the place. Bind, enter, act. Simple. So what does wrecking the place actually mean? This diagram shows you the exact mechanism, and trust me, this is a favorite for multiple choice questions. Fragment A completely shuts down the cell's ability to make proteins. How? It messes with a critical part of the machinery called elongation factor 2, or EF2. It sticks a molecule on it, that's the ADP ribosylation part, and that completely inactivates it. No more protein synthesis, and the cell dies. It's an incredibly effective kill switch. Okay. Two more super high-yield facts you gotta know about this toxin. First, get this. The gene that codes for the toxin isn't even originally from the bacteria. It's carried by a virus, a bacteriophage, that infects the bacteria. Pretty wild, right? And second, its production is controlled by iron. When iron levels are low, the bacteria freak out and start pumping out this toxin like crazy. All right, so we've got the bug, and we've got its weapon. So now the big question is, how do we get from a tiny bacterium in the throat to, well, to that? Let's connect the dots and walk through the pathogenesis. Okay, if you write down one thing from this whole explainer, make it this. Diphtheria is a toxemia, not a bacteremia. I'll say it again, toxemia, not bacteremia. This is crucial. The bacteria themselves don't go for a swim in the bloodstream. They stay put. It's the toxin that gets into the blood and causes all the systemic trouble. And this is exactly how it works. The bacteria set up shop in the pharynx, basically creating a little toxin factory. They don't invade, they just produce. They pump that toxin out, it gets absorbed into the blood, and from there, it can travel anywhere, to the heart, to the nerves, and that's what causes the really dangerous systemic complications. So now, let's bring this all back to what you'll actually see in a patient. We can finally understand how this whole process creates those dramatic signs we saw right at the beginning. Remember that nasty pseudomembrane? Well, now we know what it is. It's the direct result of the toxin killing off the local cells. That's necrosis. The body's inflammatory response rushes in, and you get this thick, leathery mess of fibrin, immune cells, blood, and dead tissue. And here's the key clinical sign you'll hear about again and again. It's stuck on tight. If you try to scrape it off, it bleeds. That's a huge giveaway. This table right here, this is your cheat sheet. It connects every sign back to the why. Why the pseudomembrane?
toxin-induced necrosis. Why does it bleed when you touch it? Because it's stuck to the raw tissue underneath. The bull neck, that's just massive swelling of the tonsils and lymph nodes. Stridor, that high-pitched breathing sound, that means the membrane is creeping down into the larynx. And yeah, that awful smell, that's just a smell of dead tissue.
So we've covered the local battle, right? There in the throat. But the war is far from over, because that toxin is now circulating all over the body. So what happens when this powerful protein synthesis stopper gets to critical places like the heart or the nerves? Think about that.